I now call this meeting of the Bryan Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is now 6 p.m. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone that is present, and I ask that if you would please turn off all the sounds on your electronic devices. Now we will have the American flag and the Texas flag pledged by Jane Long Intermediate School. If you would please stand for the pledges.
I pledge allegiance to the Texas of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Thank you so very much. Would you like to? You have the mic. They could introduce themselves, please.
Right here? Yes.
And
Okay.
parents, if
Hey
you
guys,
wanna
come
take
up.
pictures.
So these are all, not all, but some of our ambassadors. So they're going to introduce themselves and say they're great.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Gomez, and I'm in 6th grade.
I'm Victoria Lamb, and I'm in 6th grade. Hi, I'm Riley Saris, and I'm in 6th grade.
Hi, I'm Levi, and I'm in 6th grade.
I'm Charlie, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Mia Castillo, and I'm in 5th grade.
I'm Ruth Cabrera, and I'm in 6th grade.
I'm Mariana Pantoja, and I'm in 6th grade.
I'm Raylin, and I'm in 5th grade.
And a shout out to Miss Dava Carper over here, our
Thank you
awesome
all.
science
Thank
teacher.
you. Clay, did you want to get a picture of them as a group? Thank you.
Good idea.
That great photo background we have, we want to use that as much as we can.
Do not release them yet.
Thank you so very much for those wonderful pledges. Next, we'll have our elementary teachers of the month. For March, our teacher is Miss Jadlyn Colvin from Ross Elementary, introduced by Principal Danielle Laird.
Good evening. Jadlyn Colvin is a 4th grade math science teacher at Ross Elementary. She is a TIA master teacher and well deserving of the designation of Teacher of the Month for March. Ms. Colvin is the teacher you want your child to have. She has the highest of expectations, both behaviorally and academically. She instills in her students the belief and confidence that they can do it, and so they do. Each morning before tests, every morning and before tests, she has her students repeat a call and response together. It gives me goosebumps when I hear them say it, especially the lines, "Why? Because I can do anything I can put my mind to. I believe in you. Chin up, head high, tell me why. We can push through anything we put our minds to." Ms. Colvin has, and they'll be doing it tomorrow and Wednesday. Ms. Colvin has a way with students. She takes the time to really get to know them and build strong relationships with them and their parents. Families feel she is their partner, and students know that they have a team working together on their behalf. Ms. Colvin is a leader on campus where she co-chairs our student activity committee, where they plan fun and engaging activities and events for our students. She was the brains behind our well-publicized Black History Month parade. Her committee also did an exceptional job with honoring our Hispanic families with door decorating and altar for Dia de los Muertos and the Bryan High Mariachis. Ms. Colvin models what it means to be an inclusive teacher where we honor, respect, and learn about one another. Ms. Colvin has also taken on the yearbook this year, which we know is a huge feat. I'm excited to share that she has returned to Texas A&M to work towards her principal certification. I'm proud that she wants to share her many gifts as a principal one day in the future. Thank you, Ms. Colvin, for your hard work and dedication to our Ross students. We are blessed to have you.
That's hers, Ruthie. Congratulations, Ms. Colvin. Thank you for everything you do for our students. Next, we'll have our Elementary Teacher of the Month for April 2024, Ms. Ambria Brand from Jane Long Intermediate. Introduced by Dr. Desiree Caperton.
Go Lobos, it's Lobo night. So Ambria Brand is a sixth grade math teacher, a first year teacher at Jane Long. And the apple doesn't fall from the tree because her mom is Linda Taplett, who was also an amazing math teacher. Miss Brand is one of our amazing math teachers. She is new to our campus this year. She's still smiling and she's coming back. And she has been a great addition to our Lobo family. The staff, students, and families love her as a first-year teacher. She has high expectations for all of her students, a tight classroom structure, engaging activities, and incredible behavior management. Ambria has soaked up everything she's learned and has implemented it seamlessly into her classroom. Her positive and optimistic personality makes it easy for her to build relationships with her students. They know that she's invested in their learning and that she genuinely cares about them as people. You will often see her walking with students in the hallway with her arm around them, talking to them about academics, behavior, or what their plans are for over the weekend. These types of relationships encourage the students to work hard for her, wanting to make her proud. Ambria has also made great relationships with staff. There is a high level of respect for her because she works hard, she's always smiling, and she is someone her teammates can count on. We're lucky to have Miss Brand on our campus as a model of integrity, work ethic, and kindness, and we are very proud that Ambria Brown is the Teacher of the Month for April. And she brought her own cheer club.
And Ms. Brand, we'll have your gift card for you from Truist Bank. We'll make sure that you get that.
Check Felicia's purse.
In the front of the banner.
If all the family wants to make your way over, the fan club can join the next picture.
The fan club.
Miss Taplett.
Uh-oh. And there's the sign.
I didn't realize that. That's cool. It's Miss Taplett's daughter.
Oh, my gosh.
Raised her right.
Congratulations, Ms. Brand. Ms. Taplett, we had no idea that was your daughter, Ms. Taplett, so thank you for training her up the right way.
Yay.
Next, we'll have our Auxiliary Employee of the Month. Our auxiliary department will be Maintenance and Operation. The employee is Michael Shirley. Presented to us by our Executive Director of Maintenance and Operation, Mr. Ron Cleary.
The Maintenance Department is proud to recognize Chris Shirley. Where'd he go? Proud to recognize Chris Shirley as Auxiliary Employee of the Month. Chris is a carpenter and has worked for Bryan ISD since 2019. I think that's your second tour, isn't it? Second tour with Bryan ISD, and has over 35 years of experience in the industry. Chris is an excellent carpenter, a true self-starter, and exhibits extreme passion for his job. He leads by example and takes to heart the district's motto of children first, always. Chris goes above and beyond, and not only the employees in the district, but also his coworkers. Whether it's during working hours or emergency after hours, he is always willing to help the team. Throughout the years, I have had the opportunity to work with many people. However, Chris stands out as an employee who never wavers in his commitment to excellence. I have come to admire his strong work ethic and personal integrity. In addition to always doing what is best for the students of BISD, he has excellent customer service skills and communicates effectively with all stakeholders. No matter the complexity of the project thrown his way, he will find a way to get the job done. As you can see, we're lucky to have someone like Chris. He's an outstanding employee and a true asset to Bryan ISD Maintenance Department. We are honored to recognize him as the district's Employee of the Month. No, that's it. You want to go over there?
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. Congratulations. Next, we'll have recognition of Coach Wright from Rudder High School for the Read 180 Outstanding Educator Award, presented by Executive Director of School Leadership, Dr. Brian Merle.
Rachel and the others too.
Hi, Mrs. Layton and I are here tonight to spotlight and recognize Jihad Wright, who has received the National Read 180 Award for teaching. Mr. Wright is a teacher of Read 180 and other things that Mrs. Layton can talk to you about, but he's a Read 180 teacher, and he is there to help our students overcome both personal and academic obstacles in their quest to become better readers and lifelong learners. We're really excited, and congratulations to you. We also have here with us Ian Moore. He is our account executive for Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, who provides the Read 180 program in Bryan ISD.
So once again, Coach Wright, I could talk all night about Jihad. I mean, he's an amazing educator. As a principal, he's exactly the kind of person you want on campus. He is never afraid to get down and do the work. And so if you know much about Read 180, probably none of the kids want to be in that class, okay? They would probably rather be doing a different elective, but they need it to be successful. And he works through the process with them, and he is positive with them, and every kid in there believes, you know, that they are a learner now and can be successful. And so I've sat through meetings with parents and kids and all sorts of things with Coach Wright. And so to see the devotion he has to our students be successful, on top of when I talk about the work, and I'm going to give his wife credit also, or we're going to get in trouble, okay, took our track program from probably all we needed was a van to we load a bus every track meet we go to. As you guys all know, we have state medalists almost every year. We have several kids moving on to regionals this weekend, and so we are so proud of the work they do. They are out there all the time. If you've ever heard of the Blues Track Club, that's a community track club they have started here, also promoting track with our youth. And so the effect they have on our community, as well as I said earlier, the example he is for our students of a positive role model about being a father and a great husband, and what a positive community member looks like can never be understated with Coach Wright. Thank you.
Well, I'm just thankful for the opportunity to be here in front of this board today and to present Mr. Wright his certificate this year. I always brag about the work that Bryan ISD does with the Read 180 program under the leadership of Kristen Besaw and Brandy Morley. Always great data. They always do a phenomenal job, so I'm not surprised at the work that Mr. Wright does in the classroom. So on behalf of HMH, I wanted to be here today to present Mr. Jihad Wright his award for Outstanding Educator, which is a National Read 180 award.
Woo. And in case we needed to doubt the power couple, his wife was the Rudder High School Teacher of the Year, and so they are fairly amazing, and so we enjoy them very much at Rudder.
All while balancing two, don't you? They're so cute. Look at them, jeez. They're
Thank you so much, Coach Wright, you and your family for what you do for Bryan ISD and our students. Okay, moving along, we have our standing committee meetings. We only have one, Teaching and Learning Committee update, and that will be presented to us by Mr. Joel Bryan.
Thank you. On April 5th, we had the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting via Zoom. Board members present were Mrs. Felicia Benford, Mrs. Ruthie Waller, myself, Mrs. Ginger Carabine, Dr. Barbara Ibarra, and Mr. Tommy Roberts. We covered 4 topics, or actually 5 topics. The first of which was the financial aid for SWIFT transfer. The FAST program provides funding for participating public institutions of higher education so they can offer dual credit courses to educationally disadvantaged students at no cost to these students. Blinn College has voted to participate, and we will now be able to offer dual credit courses free to qualifying students and at a discounted rate for all other students. The cost savings will benefit our students as well as the district. In addition, another topic we covered was in regards to the reading academies. The reading academies are professional development required by the TEA for all new kinder through 3rd grade teachers. The TEA has discontinued the blended model, which consists of online and face-to-face training, and will only allow the comprehensive model beginning in June. The comprehensive model requires 10 days of face-to-face training. The memorandum of understanding with ESC 6 at tonight's board meeting will be for discussion and consideration. In addition, we discussed contracted services for special education. At tonight's board meeting, we'll be bringing a contract that does not exceed $60,000 for Maximum Healthcare staffing. Maxim offers a range of services to support students with behavioral health needs. And another topic discussed was planning for 24-25 school year. The planning for 24-25 is underway with the development of the district improvement plan and master schedules for secondary campuses. And there was an update for the teacher incentive allotment. The application for expansions and modifications is coming up this month. Expansions will include additional social studies courses and will likely include many fine arts courses. The TEA has asked us to serve as a mentor district for other districts that are beginning the process. And that was what we covered in our committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Now we'll have our superintendent update.
Thank you, Ms. Benford. I too have a lot to share tonight. There's so many amazing things happening in our district. In fact, I feel like there's not enough hours in the day to actually celebrate all that's happening. On this first slide, you can see some very recent events. We have students representing Branch Elementary for their color run. This is an event sponsored by their PTO. It's actually a huge fundraiser, and all the proceeds go to fund special projects for Branch Elementary. You also see a photo of the Halliburton family as we toured the Ruby Halliburton complex with some of our staff members and board members, and the Halliburton showed up in full force to take a sneak peek. We're looking forward to moving into this building at the end of May. You can also see a photo of our Bryan Collegiate juniors as they had their huge junior showcase just a few short days ago, in which they shared with the staff and the students and the community at large all of their community service projects from throughout the year. It was incredible to see the hundreds and hundreds of hours accumulated from these juniors in high school. We also have a photo of the National Honor Society inductions at Rudder High School. Tonight, we're actually missing the Bryan High School National Honor Society inductions because we're all here at the board meeting. And then finally, you see a photo of the 4th grade track meet. Again, this is just a day in the life of the great things happening in Bryan ISD. The next photo speaks 1,000 words. This is our annual showcase. Again, I believe this is the epitome of family and community engagement while spotlighting our students and our staff. And I'm pleased to share that Destination Bryan, one of our great partners who continues to invite us to join them, they shared that this was the largest turnout they've ever had in the history of First Friday in downtown Bryan. Oh, wow. So we certainly were a big draw. Again, this was all about families and communities and students and parents and just joining together for a huge block party, showing and telling everything that we offer in our amazing district. This photo, I'm going to start with, I'm going to call it the three-peat. You're looking at the Bryan High School Viking culinary students. They showed up to the Taste of Aggie Land, sponsored by our Bryan College Station Chamber of Commerce, and they walked away with the championship again, 3 consecutive years in a row. I told them next year the target's going to be pretty large because it's really hard to continue to win, but in my opinion, they dominated, and we were so proud. There's another photo, speaking of Bryan High School culinary students, we have a barbecue team. Our Viking pit smokers actually hosted a national barbecue competition right there at Bryan High School, and our team walked away with reserve grand champion. That sends them on their way to the state level competition. So we're super proud of all of our culinary students. Moving on, speaking of family and community engagement, these are students representing Bryan High School's VCOT, which stands for Vikings Kicking Out Tobacco. They hosted their Texas Tobacco-Free Kids Day at Henderson Park, and this just is another example of our students representing us on this level, connecting our families and our community and all the other students for a very worthy cause. And now you're looking at a photo that says it all. This is classic integration of the solar eclipse with our curriculum instruction and again, the epitome of hands-on learning. Thank you so much to E3 Alliance for donating 16,000 solar eclipse glasses. And you can just look at the faces of the children. I'm pretty sure they'll never forget this science lesson. Moving on, we've been really busy shining a light on so many amazing employees. This is just a perfect example of the best of the best. These are our employees for the district. Each one of the employees represented in the photo has achieved the award for their campus or department, but congratulations to Tammy Glenn, representing Jones Elementary as Elementary Teacher of the Year, Jocelyn Shirley, representing MC Harris for Auxiliary Employee of the Year, Lindsay Rogers from Bonham Elementary, representing us for Paraprofessional of the Year, Jacqueline Nasiacino, representing Johnson as Professional of the Year, Cynthia Dominguez from Bryan High School was the Secondary Teacher of the Year, Lila Adams is our Rookie Teacher of the Year, representing Jane Long Intermediate School, and last but not least, Tommy Roberts, our Principal at Bryan Collegiate High School, selected as Administrator of the Year. Besides representing us as District Teachers of the Year, another new and different this year for this particular day and award is that our Bryan ISD Education Foundation joined forces with us and went out to surprise each employee with a $1,000 check from the foundation. So it was just a wonderful investment in our employees and such excitement. So stay tuned. You'll hear more about these wonderful employees soon. And then finally, you had a little sneak peek when you got to meet Coach Wright tonight, but the Bryan High School Vikings and Rotor Rangers, their student track and field athletes are representing us on every stage possible right now. Several of the athletes qualified from the district meet to participate in the area track meet, and from that, several have made their way to the regional track meet this weekend. And I am optimistic that we will see some of these athletes representing us at the state track meet in Austin in a few short weeks. So stay tuned to that. And with that, I'm just, again, thankful to have the opportunity to share all of the wonderful things happening in our district. So thank you, Ms. Benford.
Thank you, Ms. Carabine. Wonderful things happening in Bryan ISD. Now we'll move on to our information items. First on our agenda is the 2024-2025 budget update, presented by Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Kevin Besaw. Oh, and he has a team with him to help him, okay?
Thank you. I invited some friends to come along and help with this. We are coming again before you to talk about the budget as we work through this, and there's many phases and many things that we're working on at this time. So we will work through this and bring you as much information as we can. Some of this will be some repeat information that you may have seen in a previous meeting or that we put out for you, but some of it will be new, and so we can go through it fairly quickly in some points, but if there's any questions, then go ahead and stop us as need be.
I'm going to scoot this back just a little bit because I'm having a hard time seeing all of you at one time. So when we talk about our budget goals and how we're going through this particular process, things need to be top of mind. And the first thing that's top of mind is high quality instruction, making sure that we're taking care of the classroom. That is our ultimate job and our priority. And in order to do that, we have to be able to recruit and retain high quality workforce that are skilled at educating and supporting what happens in the classroom. We, of course, want to maintain a healthy fund balance and make sure that we're in a strong financial position, as Mr. Besaw always makes sure that we are. And then finally, safety and security are always paramount for how we operate schools and how we take care of both students, staff, and community. As we go through this budget process, and as you've seen across the state, of course there are going to be changes, but our long-term goal is to make sure that we are streamlined, that we're efficient, so that we can properly compensate the staff that are here in our district, and that we retain those high-quality individuals who are going to get the most gains with our students in the time we have with them. So that's always top of mind in how we move forward in decision-making with the data in front of us.
Yes, ma'am. We'll go through the timeline of how we've gotten to where we are today. As you can see, it's budget and legislative timeline. If you go back to 22-23 budget, of course, we worked that up through coming through the spring, summer of 23. Coming into that, we knew the state was getting ready to go into legislative session. There were talk about record budget surpluses for the state, and a lot of talk about the things they were planning or suggesting that they may do for public education. The governor actually called a committee task force to study teacher pay and those kind of things. So there was a lot of optimism on that as we went forward. You go into the January 2023 legislative session. Of course, we suffered through that, or we worked through it, I'll say. Watched as the things happened and then didn't happen. Nothing actually made it to the governor's office, despite several bills that were passed or put forward and needed to go through both houses and get to the governor. None of that happened at that point. As we started working on 23-24 budget, which is the year we're currently under, they still continued to work through special sessions, and there was still some talk that that would get worked out. Everything would come forward, and there'd be some additional funding for public education. Would mention they did eventually ended up with doing 4 special sessions. Each time they came forward, I believe each time public education funding was on there. Vouchers also were on there, and they could not agree on that. And I'll just make a note, there was approximately at the beginning of that session, there was about $4.5 billion that were appropriated to be used for public education. And we would note that the money still is sitting there. The governor could call a special session, and we could do something with that at this point. But as Dr. Brownson pointed out the other night, that money will not be there indefinitely. When the state budget wraps up for the current fiscal year, that money will go back into the state budget, and it'll be at the discretion of the next session as they get to the January of 25 session. And again, they went through the 4 sessions. Nothing was done on that. That's also how the funding works for school districts as we go through the year. When we finish up the school year in August, as we've done every year in the past, the state then does what they call settle up. They calculate all of our attendance, all the things that we've done, and how we've earned that money, so to speak. And then we do a final settle up. Well, since COVID, there's been a decrease in attendance nationwide and in Texas. So when they've made their estimates and done the funding for the school districts, at the end of those years when they do the settle up, there's been money left on the table for public education because of the reduced attendance, because we're paid on the attendance that we have. And so there's been that money left, and again, just like the $4.5 billion would be, it'll roll into next year's fiscal budget for that. So it doesn't stay there for public education. It goes back into the main pot and is available for the next legislative session. And they will come back in session again in January of 25. So we're hopeful that there will be something at that point, but I don't think we can sit and wait. As we've seen, there seems to be not a lot of movement in Austin at this point. So I think we need to operate as if what we have is what we get. We go through looking at the statewide financial challenges. These are the main 3 things that every district in the state is dealing with right now. Of course, record inflation, end of the ESSER grants, which was the COVID relief funds, and then no change in the basic allotment, as we talked about going through there. And those 3 things right there have caused many districts to have to do some really drastic things as they've moved forward, trying to put a budget together and be able to move forward and function and do instruction. And just a little bit of our cup analogy again. So just to go back real quick, the analogy of the funding for school districts in the state of Texas is the TEA, or Texas Education Agency, gives each district a cup. And that represents our funding. The size of the cup is determined basically by the basic allotment amount, $6,160 per student, and the amount of days that they are in attendance, or our average daily attendance. It's adjusted some for weighted average attendance for special programs like CTE, bilingual, special education, those kind of things. That number, the 6,160, has not changed since 2019. Then the funding for each student, of course, is reduced by those number of absences in the day. And then the property tax amount of revenue that we receive would fill that cup to a certain point, and then the state would fill the rest of the cup. But increased property tax revenues do not increase the district's revenue. it just fills the cup more and reduces the amount that the state would put in. And then just some items that we're looking at. So you can see the inflation since 2019. The lines on the graph represent the inflation lines. And the cup, of course, you see there represents a funding for the school district. And you see the cup hasn't changed, but the lines have increased pretty dramatically. If you look at on the left side there, some of our increases are pretty dramatic. Fuel, of course, you know, if you fill up your car, 91%, we've increased since 19. Utilities, property insurance has gone up a great deal. Much of that is inflation. Some other reasons with insurance companies pulling out of states. Health insurance, for example, is another one that our health costs have gone up. If just a note there, the Texas legislature had increased the basic allotment by the amount, the same percentage as inflation, would represent about an $1,100 increase per student to that basic allotment, or roughly $15 to $16 million for the district.
So can I go back two slides to the tan cup?
Okay.
And this isn't a question, but more of a exclamation point. So that red dotted line is where we've been since 2019, roughly, with student attendance, with what our basic allotment is.
Well, the red dotted line actually represents the amount of property tax that fills the cup.
Okay.
Property tax revenue, and then the rest would be filled by the state.
Okay, so
But
the
size
red dotted line is what we actually get through property taxes.
Through property taxes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am, you're correct.
So that, believe it or not, who would have ever imagined we'd be saying yay for property taxes? But at least we know that that's coming. So nothing, though, has really changed since 2019. Then the next slide is showing us, so we're still working since 2019 on a little over $6,000 per student.
Correct.
With all this inflation that's happened, and thank you for BTU, because our utilities are probably the less of the inflation, but even BTU has to, help keep themselves going. But and this doesn't even include food, does it? There's not even food.
That's not an item that we put on, yeah. Right, and the CPI, the numbers that the line represents do not, you're right.
So with all this increase in inflation, and it's not just Bryan ISD, we're talking Texas schools.
Right. Correct.
So with all this increase in inflation, we started school this year again with the just barely over 6,000 per student, when we could have caught up with the 1 year we had an overage or an abundance that was sitting there waiting for public schools. And it never happened because of the jam that happened in the legislature. And here you are having to make this presentation to us, and here we are having to govern our district with this, and you just can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. And so it's just a dadgum shame that we've gotten to this point. So when we're asking and telling and trying to educate our people, our loved ones that we have here in Bryan ISD, this is a really good example. In this graph, when we started a couple of years ago, we were in that little blue line, and there's the bottom of the cup. But now we're way up here for the top of that blue and black end of the graph up high. And so we're working, all schools pretty much are working in a deficit. And I'm not a, mathematician, but you can see this and understand. So that's my.
Kevin, I have a question, just for my own personal education, understanding this concept. So our cup size is determined by the allotment per student, which is $6,160 times the number of students we enroll in Bryan ISD.
Yeah, not actually the number of students we enroll, the number of students who actually attend.
So I think that's where I'm confused. So what determines the size of the cup?
Right, so basically, it's the 6,160 times whatever our average daily attendance turns out to be at the end of the year.
Okay, so that number that we receive from the state fluctuates based on daily attendance. And then how does, so it sounds like the size of the cup changes, is that right?
Not unless we change the basic allotment or something to that effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the remainder is filled by property taxes.
Well, yeah, so the state sets the size of the cup based on basic allotment times that number of students in attendance. And then property tax revenue fills a certain amount of the cup. That's up to the red line, as in the other one. And then the rest of the cup is filled by state funding. So if property tax revenue goes up, that red line goes up, but the state just fills in less. So it just shifts between the local and state revenue on that.
Okay.
These are actually very good
yeah.
questions because
Yeah.
enrollment plays a part in it, as in there's a finite number of students in Bryan ISD, but it's on average daily attendance. So there's 16,000 students, but we don't get funded on 16,000 students if we have any absent kids. So
So is it funded on the average daily attendance?
average daily attendance.
Okay.
Which is, at the end of the year, we take our average daily attendance for the year. So we're always getting it from the year or 2 years behind.
Well, it's current year now. It used to be a lag with the property tax values, but they changed that in 2019.
And so the mindset of, it's not really, it was just a shift in their thought process after COVID, when students and parents thought, you know, my student doesn't have to be there every day, or they're not going to go because the person next to them has a sneeze, is sneezing. And I mean, there's so many reasons that we just don't have the attendance that we used to have. But I know for a fact, our principals, our attendance people, our dropout prevention, I mean, they hunt their children. They're looking for them to find out what's wrong, why you're not at school, can we help? Is it illness, is it a ride, whatever you need. So I know they're working hard to get the kids to school. It's just not like when you and I grew up and my mom knew that I was going to be at school, and if I wasn't, I had like 4 people to have to deal with by the time I went to bed that night.
Yes, ma'am.
So.
And that's not just a Bryan ISD phenomenon. That's nationwide, statewide. After COVID, attendance numbers were down somewhere in the between 2 and 3%. As compared to prior to COVID. So it's something that every district works on, and you're right, we do work on it very hard, but it's something that's changed in a nationwide, just a thought process, I guess.
Kevin, could you go back to the previous slide, please, for just a second? I'm sorry, the one with the inflation, with the insurance that went up?
There we go.
Okay, so if we're looking at property insurance, so it's gone up from 934 in 2020 to 2.8 million. So that's like 300%, isn't it? I can't do Aggie math. Anyway, it's a huge percentage. Is there a point where we could be self-insured, or is that not allowed? It just seems if we're spending $3 million a year, is this property insurance? Because I know we have limited liability on a lot of things.
Property and casualty, yes, for the vehicles and all the, of course, you have to remember, we insure about $600 million worth of value. So
it sounds like a good idea until a tornado comes in and wipes out $100 million worth. So yes, sir.
Yeah. So
okay.
I mean, it is something, and that's not all entirely inflation. Part of that, and I've explained other times too that.
New schools.
Yeah, some of them, insurance companies are pulling out of states, California, Texas, where the storms, fires, all that, just because of the extreme damage and the cost to repair them. They just won't write. I think State Farm just not recently quit writing homeowners insurance in California.
Yes, sir.
So the fewer companies that we can get to bid on the higher the price goes.
We deal with that all the time. But yeah, if we have that much in property, obviously we're not. I'm not that risk, I'm too risk averse to think about going. I just wanted to ask a question, so thank you.
Yeah, and we have raised in the past, we've set aside money in fund balance, committed it in fund balance, and raised the deductibles somewhat to, to
Okay.
self-insure a little bit more anyway to
Yes,
try
sir.
to reduce them, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to put in my 2 cents on this because, like everybody's saying, we're trying to educate as well because we're getting a pretty clear handle on how things happened in the legislature. But I'm just going to say that the one person most responsible for public schools not getting any additional funding despite inflation was Governor Abbott. So if you happen to see him in the grocery store or something, just please ask him why. The term hostage has been used, that school funding was held hostage. That's very accurate. That's very accurate. It was like, I will let public schools get money, but only if I get something that's really pretty much disconnected from public school funding, and that's the voucher program. So I get vouchers, you get additional school funding. I don't get vouchers, you don't get it. You just have to keep operating at a deficit level with teachers not getting paid as well as they should. If anybody that listens to this is interested in trying to right a wrong, then speak up. Speak up, because this is not right. It was handled in a terrible manner, and I have no qualms about saying that. And it's not because of politics, not that it really matters, but I pretty much just, well, I can say pretty much exclusively voted Republican. And I, so it's not like I'm somebody out there trying to just get this into some sort of political party statement. It's not. There are many Republicans, including our 2 representatives that unfortunately are retiring, who stood firm with school funding being a priority and not supporting the vouchers. And they were good, solid Republican representatives that unfortunately are ending their terms and did not run for re-election. So it's heartbreaking to me to see what has happened, and that not enough people have spoken about it, have not said, what is going on? Why did you let this happen? Why are you letting public schools suffer like this? Because they are working so hard to educate every student. So that's my speech. I just hope that more people will voice their opinions and in support of public schools.
All right, as Mr. Besaw mentioned, that cup of funding that we receive funds the entire local budget. Local budget is predominantly a payroll budget. So 86% of our local budget comes in payroll. Predominantly, that's teachers. We'll look at that in just a moment. 14% comes from other costs, things like we just mentioned, Mr. Gonzalez, the property insurance, that comes out of that 14%. Utilities, Ms. Waller, you mentioned that earlier too, also out of that 14%. And while we can make some efficiency models in the 14%, we actually can't fix what's going on in public schools without also looking at staffing. And so it's important for us to know how that staff breaks down. The vast majority, as you would expect and probably hope, falls in instruction, as it should. That's the closest to the classroom. That's teachers' aides, that's teachers, people who work in the classroom setting or in the instructional setting. The smaller sections of the payroll budget, as you see right here, come from a sundry of different areas. And basically it's going to take everyone working together to find out where there are opportunities to do things a little differently. It's not that instruction should bear the burden. They will shoulder it along with everyone else in the district, that we become more efficient, we become more streamlined, we rethink job duties and classifications. As each person makes a choice to resign or relocate, we look at that position to determine how to fill it, if to fill it. Can we shift personnel in new ways and accomplish the same goals without compromising those goals that we talked about earlier? High quality instruction, high quality workforce, safety and security, and maintaining a strong fiscal position with our fund balance and everything else. So when we talk about payroll, we also talk about our HR team. So Ms. Kuhn, if you'll take the next slide.
So we have a group of schools that we're compared to. So our comparable group is on this slide here, and they're the ones in blue. And those schools look like us with enrollment size, demographics, the low socioeconomic status, and so we're comparable to those school districts. And when you look at those, most of those, or all those listed here, have a higher student to employee or to staff rate comparison of students to employees. And so if you look at it, you can see that through the year, our enrollment has been flat and just kind of staying the same, but our staff has increased, and it's increased 9.2%. And so we're getting out of alignment with what we should be. We have lower classroom enrollments and such. And if you look at Cy-Fair and Waller here, they're not in our comparable group, but we wanted to highlight those two districts just because they're within driving range for our professionals to leave Bryan ISD and go to one of those districts and make a substantial more amount of money and commute back and forth. If you look at this as well, we want to highlight and point out that our staffing does not include any of our employees that we fund with title money. So, for example, our instructional coaches are all paid out of title money and not out of the local funds. So this number here is the student to employee ratio based upon who's paid with local or our ESSER funds that we got from the federal government. And we want to, if possible, through attrition, maybe like Barbara said, look at positions and maybe not backfill positions because we're wanting to get our staff, our salaries to a higher rate than what it is right now. And the only way we're going to do that in the long run is that we have to kind of tighten our belt a little bit right now and look at what we're doing.
Dr. Barr, would you kindly go back to the previous slide and just have
absolutely.
one quick question?
There you go.
When we're looking at, because we always hear the administration is where all the money goes. Would you kindly break down, so we've got general administration, school leadership, institutional leadership. Who falls under those, please?
So you're going to find that people are in lots of different places based on their role and their function. For example, myself, I am in 21, instructional leadership.
Okay.
But if you ask Ms. Kuhn over here, she's in 41, general administration. So TEA has very specific roles based on your role ID, what fund you should come out of, and how you should be funded, if that helps any. So it's a little
and the school
cross.
leadership would be?
It's actually campus leadership, not that school leadership. They're actually in instructional leadership with me. So that's kind of how TEA works it out with role ID.
So who would be school leadership?
Campuses.
The principals?
Assistant principals,
Gotcha.
yes.
Gotcha.
All
okay,
those,
and
all
it makes
those
sense that should be a big chunk of it. So that's what I wanted.
You're like,
we see leadership and people are like, well, is that the administration? So that is actually our principals out on the ground.
Yes,
well.
there
so
is.
Great, thank
Absolutely.
you.
And just one more comment to Mrs. Kuhn's statement there, that while our enrollment has been stable and it's been consistent, we did increase staff, which I think you're going to see is pretty common of most districts post-COVID, especially with students with different needs and demographics. A lot of places added staff. In fact, we were encouraged to do so with the ESSER funding, which is also in that calculation. So it's just now time to revert to a more streamlined and efficient model following the pandemic and as we're exiting that pandemic. And hopefully kids are a little bit more stable. As Mr. Besaw mentioned, their attendance has been a campaign. School leadership has led that, Ms. Montoya. And we're starting to see a higher rate of attendance. Things are starting to return to some pre-COVID norms for us.
So,
yes,
Mr. Barr, the FTE is, explain.
So FTE is essentially an employee, a person. Okay. And so you can, full-time equivalent, yeah.
And so,
we just use it as a name, don't we?
but is that all employees or teachers?
So when we say FTE here, we're talking any employee. So school nutrition, custodial, bus driver, all of the people that are employed by a district.
It's not class size, that's what you're
So,
yes.
Right. So as we've hired more staff, we have lowered our student to staff ratio.
More personalized attention, although it's not always in the classroom. And so,
right.
Although I will say the vast majority of the positions that were added came out of Function 11, which is instruction. And so it actually mirrors that.
So
most of them were classroom-based.
Districts have, 3 and 4 kids, per class makes a big difference. And some of those other
Yes.
districts have many more students per staff person.
While the ratios are different here, I think what we find is that as we do just small adjustments across the board, because it's in so many places, you actually get larger gains very quickly by making small adjustments. 1-2 different kids in a classroom across the board makes a tremendous impact on the number of employees needed to serve the students without any employee feeling overburdened in that way. So that's our goal, is to make the changes subtle, but to make them with instruction coming first for students.
Do you have an average, I'm sorry, do you have an average class size?
It depends on the level, the content, and the subject. All sorts of things kind of play into that. For example, you'll see a very different ratio in a PE class than you would in a welding class. So at the elementary level, previously, the state had the 22-to-1 ratio. We are under a District of Innovation waiver for that. Our teachers voted for that on that committee. And so we have more flexibility to go to 23, or in some instances 24. When you get up to intermediate, you can do a little bit more, 24, maybe 25. Same at middle school, about 25. It doesn't really work out perfectly that way because the way master schedules work and the electives they select, sometimes because of the special needs of a population at a campus, the way it breaks down, there might be fewer than that, far fewer than that, which is why we start looking at where programs are housed on campuses and if we can consolidate those programs so that, one, students aren't isolated, and two, teachers have a teammate to plan with. We talked about that when we did attendance boundaries last year, trying to maximize the impact and the need for students to be around other students with similar needs. So it does vary. I don't mean to be evasive with your question.
No,
but it is kind of
It is fine. Sometimes it's a little misleading when we look at the enrollment per
Sure,
FTE.
sure.
You know, and I have teachers go, no, my classes are full, and we're saying, well, no, we're the lowest in anywhere around
Right.
here, but our classrooms are full. We're not going to have empty classrooms, is what I guess is what
Yes,
I'm
sir,
asking.
that's
So they are pretty full.
Yes.
So it just, like I said, I just want to be clear that this enrollment per FTE is not actually class size.
not classrooms at all. Everyone's included.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
This was actually a follow-up to Mr. Gonzalez's previous comment, so shame on you for cutting me off.
You've talked enough over the years, David.
But he made a point about asking about the pie chart, what those leadership positions were.
Yes, sir.
And this is sort of just a reminder as I was looking at it, and also when, mentioning things like FTEs, that I know the public is going to see some of this stuff, and we want them to understand it. So it is, I know sometimes easy to forget, I guess, that not everybody, even board members, sometimes even understand exactly what this means. So I guess without trying to make you work a lot harder, a little more detail with regard to what is included in that, either however you could do it, maybe a separate page of I don't know.
That's actually ready already, and we've shared it with district leadership team. We'd be happy to.
For, I think, a lot of people to
Yeah, I agree.
What does that include? So, because that is
What falls in that category?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Very easy to do.
Thank you.
Also, too, Mr. Stassny, you've brought it up over the years and asked us to make sure that we were mindful of it, that administrative ratio as compared to others across the state. Bryan ISD had been at or below the state average for the administration ratio across the state. So we still work hard to do it. There are a couple different ways that's calculated depending on which source you go to. But in every instance, we've been right there with the rest of the state in terms of how we staff for that particular topic.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to kind of wind up here with purposeful planning and what we've been doing for the past couple of years, actually, preparing for the potential that this could happen. If we go back to spring of 22, as we're working on budgets, we actually did some budget cuts for the campus and departments across the board. I think that was a 5%. We also have been working on shifting some of our eligible items to the ESSER funds, because we talked about the difference between the title and the local. You can't just shift back and forth, but the ESSER funding has given us an opportunity to move some things into ESSER, and then then we can not worry about the supplanting and move it back to title in that regard. Spring of '23, again, we preparing the budget, we did some budget cuts again across the board for campus and administration, just not personnel, but some of the discretionary funds that they had available. And then go on through there, we've, of course, you brought consultation in with Dr. Brownson with TASBO. We feel that that's been very helpful just to give us some guidance and make sure that we're on the right path and, we're turning over every stone, so to speak, making sure we're not missing something that's staring us right in the face or that we're completely out of whack with in any area compared to other districts. And then, of course, we see some other things. We've got, we've already done the fiscal year-end change. We did that basically to bolster the fund balance and buy us some time. So we have this next year to work through these issues. And again, probably about 300 districts in the state, or about not quite a third, are on that June 30 year end. Many of them switched back in 2010 and 11 when the last time that there was a big reduction in funding. This time has not been a reduction, but in that year, I think they pulled out something around $4 billion from public education. And as we go through, of course, we've done various meetings with the department, our district leadership teams, campus leadership, department leadership. We've been on we call it our road show. We've gone out, several of us, and we've met with teachers, staff on campuses. We've been through quite a number of those. We still have a few to finish up, but we've made it through quite a few, and there's been some good feedback from that. People have complimented just to have the information, so what we're working on, what we're going through, and we'll continue to do that right up until the point where we finish in June and bring back the budget for consideration at that point.
All right, so then just ending again with what our goals are. As Mr. Besaw mentioned, the campus feedback has been tremendous. They are equally frustrated with the state of Texas school financing of public schools, or Texas financing of public schools, but they do understand that we're doing it with them rather than to them, and they appreciate the conversation. They also understand that the way we go about this is we're going to have to be more efficient and streamlined with our staffing models in every division, not just in one particular area. But the silver lining, so to speak, is as we go through that in the future, we're optimistic and hopeful that there will be future funding sources, and once those are available, we'll be able to leverage them for greater compensation for the staff that are here serving the students. So that's the end goal, and the hope is to make sure that we are leveraged to be able to take advantage of that funding to impact in the most positive way possible. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Besaw, Ms. Ibarra, Ms. Kuhn. Next, we will move to our next information item, will be the MC Harris Program Facility Update. That will be presented by Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Mr. Besaw, Executive Director of School Leadership, Dr. Brian Merle, Executive Director of Auxiliary Services, Mr. Ron Clearly, and Executive Director of Special Programs, Ms. Jennifer Warren.
We're back again. Thanks for the opportunity to come and share a little bit more about the process of in consideration of looking at what we're doing with MC Harris, where it's located, and then the staff that's obviously at the Milam campus. And so we're excited to come back. We've been working feverishly to try to bring additional information in front of you, and the team that you see behind us has all been working on their various parts and collaboration to make sure that we're communicating effectively. So if we go to the next slide, just to catch you and remind everybody of how we're currently using the buildings. We've got our Milam campus, which is currently functioning as a special education hub. If you'll look there in the first and the second wing, and what we would consider the third wing in the cafeteria is not being utilized at this point. So we have a staff that many of them are housed there, and then some of them are coming and going. It's a wonderful location, and it has functioned very effectively for our SPED department. Hammond Oliver is currently our MC Harris School, and that is the one-story building, and there is limitations in that building as well. Many of y'all remember it was the old hospital, It's had some renovation, but it's still, honestly, the bones are still there for an old hospital. And there's all kinds of various things that remind us of that on a daily basis, to be completely honest with you. So there are definitely limitations. If I take you back even maybe a year ago, we looked at moving in portables next to MC Harris to possibly look at a little bit of an expansion. Again, we mentioned a waiting list for our current seniors and juniors, maybe that are credit deficient, that would love to take advantage of the expedited model of MC Harris that at this point we're not able to serve, and that was not possible. In addition to that, we looked for even some CTE options. We looked at all the various campuses that were in and surrounding that, and it just really wasn't possible without a large expenditure of money. In addition to that, there's some HVAC issues or concerns with the current one-story building that we would need to at least look at in future years. Nothing maybe immediately, but at the same time, we just have to assess that. And so we looked, when we looked to move the portable over, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars to get electricity to that building. And we couldn't run it from either one of those campuses, either the one-story building or the second-story building. We were actually going to run it from Bryan Collegiate. So we're going to have to go all the way across just to get the electricity there. So just an interesting situation, to be completely honest with you, not something that we expected. The Hammond Oliver is on the same existing property. They kind of share a parking lot, if you will. And so the one story is obviously MC Harris. The two-story is our DAEP. And that has functioned through the years as, in various capacities as a professional building. It was the medical professional building as well. And so again, that's where our DAP is currently housed.
Am I clicking? Okay, thank you. So the MC Harris program would continue as the alternative education environment, the alternative education high school for Bryan ISD, and it would still continue to serve our students that are overaged, undercredited, or at risk for any number of reasons. Very rarely do I have a student at MC Harris that is not at risk, but there is the occasional one or two students. Students choose to come to MC Harris for all kinds of reasons. It may be because they're overaged, undercredited. It may be because they just need a smaller environment to be successful in. We have quite a few that kind of fit that criteria. So everybody kind of has their own reason. They actually do a handwritten application for why they want to come. We read those. Their counselors and assistant principals and principals also often advocate for them. We've tried to find ways to just keep kids excited about school, and so one of the things that we had talked about last year was the expansion of CTE opportunities. There isn't room in my current building. Kids would like it, and so right now both of the comprehensive high schools, they work with us on kids that do come to us to let the students continue to go back to Rudder or Bryan High. We have someone going for barbering to Rudder, cosmetology over at Bryan High. We have someone still going to construction, someone still going to welding. So we try to keep those in place so they can earn their hours and get their certificate. But it would be great if we could have a way to, once they maybe get caught back up on their credits, to be able to go back to whatever it is they were excited to do in high school.
Figured out we had a clicker. So we've been working, Ms. Warren and myself have been looking at and talking with the entire team and working on this update in the process. So we've been conducting collaboration and feedback sessions with not only MC Harris, but the special education services as well. I think we've been out there a few times to make sure that we're listening. And something that was said earlier is doing things with people instead of to people. So we've attempted to do that through this entire process as well. I think that's really important. And it really started, honestly, a few years ago. I think Ms. Carabine went to MC Harris, and she went for a time where you meet with the superintendent, and they remembered 5 or 6 years ago sort of promises, I guess, made, where they thought they were going to go to MC Harris. In fact, going to Milam, excuse me. They brought out the old presentation, they had it, and they glued it to the big posters and reminded everybody, like, hey, this is what we want. And so that began sort of the conversation in conjunction with graduation. If you remember graduation, and I think everybody's had the opportunity to go through an MC Harris graduation, at the back, as they list what the students are doing, you'll see many of them are requesting CTE courses. And so in a lot of cases, we're not maybe able to do exactly what Dr. Casper said, we're looking to expand it where applicable. And so Milam would possibly give us that option. So we looked at various scenarios. In addition to that, we've had numerous people that have been conducting a cost analysis of needs to fully utilize the Milam campus.
In addition to that, with the feedback sessions, our especially special education staff have not only provided feedback for a possible move to the third wing, but also some additional opportunities to utilize different buildings. So you'll hear a little bit about that in actually the next slide. But with that, we have assured everyone that it would be a phased approach, that it wouldn't be rushed and hurried through that whole process, creating undue chaos. So that is part of the conversations that we've had is, what do you need to be able to make this move and be successful moving into the next school year? And then also we have drafted timelines so that our staff have a general idea of moving toward this shift with an understanding of when these things are going to happen so that they don't get caught off by surprise.
So we looked at scenario 1, which will pop up on the screen. Scenario 1. So we looked at it, and I mentioned earlier that when you look at Milam, only half, a little over half the building is being used. So the first wing, the front office, and then the middle wing are being used. The third wing, which is roughly 18 classrooms and a bunch of offices, are just sort of sitting empty, to be honest. And so we looked at if there was something that we could possibly do to utilize both those spaces. So what we would do is MC Harris would take over the first and second wing in the cafeteria, and then the third wing would be, that's currently not being used, special education would move over there. The Hammond Oliver one-story building would just sort of transition to limited use, no students. We don't really have anybody that would be moving over there. And then the two-story building would stay as a DAUP. So that was kind of scenario number 1.
Scenario number 1 is one of the scenarios, or the scenario that seemed to gain the most traction. But as we went through the feedback, especially for our special education staff, we recognized that what they needed for a facility was not necessarily the best fit with a third wing at Milam, because those the majority of those 4 walls are classrooms, not office spaces, and so much of the work has to be done in an office-type setting for the administrative work of special education. And so a second scenario was presented to the special education team to consider doing a flip with the Hammond Oliver Annex and having DAEP go to the third wing of Milam. And that was presented to the special education staff, and they were very favorable with that scenario. Both scenarios present a great solution to several groups of students, but you'll see in the upcoming slides some of the cost differentials with that. But I do want to put in a plug for special education. This can be somewhat stressful to consider a move going into the next school year, and disruption of services, and making sure that we follow through with them hand in hand. But overwhelmingly in their feedback to us was, if the students need the building, then they get the building. We just want to make sure when we move, we also can continue the work that we do. And that was a very overwhelming sentiment from the special education department.
Wasn't special education at the Hammond Oliver Annex?
Yes, and many of our employees still remember that. I do believe
yes.
Linda was also there.
Welcome home.
I think since then, before my time in district, that building has undergone some renovations, so the spaces may not look exactly the same, but the bones are there, and the staff is pleased to go somewhere where it allows students to be served.
So we're looking at putting our special education staff in that Hammond Oliver Annex. That's a big building, so how many staff are we putting in that? I mean, to me, that's a big building. Is it feasible to put a small number there?
So it actually ends up becoming a very equal trade. When you look at the Milam third wing with the 18 classrooms that it has to offer, and the number of office spaces, we were having to outfit those classrooms to become office spaces. And when the building was renovated, those office spaces became somewhat classrooms. There was a lot of changes, and the building doesn't quite look like what it used to. but it does offer an adequate amount of space with a training room, a space for those large meetings that they need to have, their audit folders and such. There is a room for extra storage of adaptive equipment and bigger items that are needed for things such as Special Olympics and those items that we love to store for with those special events. But for the most part, the building would be people and some shared spaces where the current classrooms are, or office spaces for our interpreters, clerks, secretaries, and such.
Have we looked at selling any of these places? I mean, if we don't have students in them, and I would ask Mr. Beasall, I didn't know if there's I know it's so weird with school finance. If you sell something, if we sell a building, do we lose that money? Do we have to give it back to the state? Or is that money that we could use to purchase another building or different land? Are there any stipulations?
You want to go to the.
Sorry, Kevin. Sorry, guys.
I can jump in before he gets to the mic. It would be something that we would discuss with the school board of trustees. You would absolutely be very involved with that. There is one rule that if there's an existing building on the land that you own, the first right of refusal is a charter school. So that's something
Really?
for all public schools to consider.
Wow.
Versus if it's just land and there's not a facility, that is not applicable. And there are different methods of selling property. But again, that would absolutely come to the school board for initial discussion.
I figured there had to be some.
Absolutely.
I had no idea about that rule.
Absolutely, but should we consider it? Absolutely. We will have that discussion when the time is right.
Okay.
Mhm. Great question.
What she said.
Good job, Mr. Beasall. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Brian, another thing is, we're looking, I know we have a time frame, and school getting started, and people having to move. What is our time frame for getting MC Harris in that building before
Right.
school starts? We don't want kids and
No, ma'am. Middle of the
moving
year,
back
starting
and
next
forth
week.
mid-year.
Some of that's going to be addressed in the next few slides. We've got some cost analysis to make that happen. We agree completely. We want to do that between when it's approved and the start of next school year. And so as it turns out, we've got enough classrooms that match with what we're currently using for MC Harris and a few extra, to be honest, that we've not ever had before, where we're looking and we've got a large enough cafeteria for everybody to sit in. We've got a gym that we've never had before, an LGI that we've never seen. And then in addition to that, we have additional classrooms. At this point, we don't have staff. And so we don't.
What's an LGI?
Large group instruction area.
Okay.
It was the library, but there's no books in it anymore.
Old school, Brian.
It's just a big room, basically.
Big room with books. We don't call it a library.
Yeah, and then the third wing at this point with DAP, they would take 10 classrooms. So we have an additional 8 with offices that we think we could, if we needed to, use or grow into or do anything with that we needed. So we have additional space between those two buildings that are currently MC Harris and DAP that would allow us to be under one roof.
Okay, big people furniture, not little
Believe it
furniture.
or not, we do. Yeah, and they'll talk some about that.
I'm just teasing because David,
I'm sorry I missed
it
that.
blows David's mind about how much the cost of little people furniture.
I'm just so sorry I missed that.
Yeah, so just to get to the next step as we've gotten through this, and of course, as Dr. Merrill said, there's been many iterations of what this might look like, starting previous years with moving portables in there and one move in here and the other move in there. It's been a lot of moving parts, and finally, once we got that nailed down, we've been able to get a couple of quotes on doing some of this work and getting the things right for the people to move in and how they need to be. It's much of cosmetic, I believe, and Mr. Clary can join in on that. But there is a lot. It's 2 separate buildings that they'd be looking at. But you can see the scenario 1 and scenario 2 there going through as we go down the facility upgrades and that. We've gotten a quote that we think we would be asking for approval for not to exceed $350,000 on that for all of the work that needed to be done. And then as you go on down, we have bond money for 2014, which, if you remember, and we're being told, reminded that was for this purpose in the first place. So that would be utilizing that money to do that. There's approximately $550,000 remaining in that we could use for that item. Then, of course, the furniture, we, do the 2014. We could also do 2019 for the instructional part of that. And on down the line there to come up with the two scenarios. So the scenario 2, which I think they've talked about being probably the preferred one, is also the one that comes in at a cost, favorable cost on that as well.
When you look at the two scenarios, a lot of the costs are fairly comparable until you get down to staffing. Scenario 2 is a much more efficient model, mainly because both MC Harris and DAP deal with students, and there'll be students on campus, and so there can be some shared staffing, not have to have a monitor at DAP and a monitor at Milam, and so there can be some much more efficient usage of our staff.
It rarely comes out where the better alternative, the most popular alternative is the cheapest one. It's a cheaper one, so that's always nice.
Yeah, and it's about the cost of the fence.
Or small, or as y'all say, the little furniture.
And keeping with that end in mind, which is, being ready for school to start in August, we are still in the planning. We're still doing some planning during the month of April. We're bringing some information to you today, and I think we're bringing an item tonight for your approval. Is that right?
Yes.
For your approval tonight. And then as soon as we get that approval, we hope to get some of the work started. Some of the area that we're going to be working in is currently vacant, so we can jump in there and start now, because it's going to be a logistical circuit, not a circus, but domino dance. It's going to be a dance, moving people around, because we'll have to move one in and then renovate and et cetera. So we've got a lot of work to do in the month of May and June. And then hopefully by that time, we'll be moving people in the month of July to be ready for school in August. And that concludes our presentation.
Do we have any other questions from the board? No other questions. Thank you so very much for that presentation. Next, we will move to assessment and accountability update, presented to us by Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Barbara Ibarra.
Thank you, Ms. Binford. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit back to last year, but I'm going to do high level and a little swift because we've done this before. But we are actually in the middle of STAR testing season, and there's lots of comments and questions circulating across the state about STAR assessments. So if you would indulge me, please, we're going to go a little bit back to last year. Last year was the first year that the state implemented STAR redesign. I like to call it STAR 2.0, so do a lot of people, because everything basically changed about the assessment, but the name did not change. And so it's causing some confusion, in particular right now across the state, with why the scores are so different on one particular item, i.e. writing. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's so different because the test is so very different. Last year, when the state did the redesign of STAR, which was actually required by statute, they changed the structure of the assessment, the types of items, technology-enhanced items. They changed the content. They added writing to every grade, every subject, every assessment. So there's always a writing component now on your math test, on social studies, etc. They changed the indicators in the accountability system. They changed the cut points in the accountability system, and they changed the methodology. All of those things shifted, and we had STAR 2.0, and we had an accountability refresh in terms of all of those calculations. So that was last year. And as you recall, we didn't get the results until this fall, but early on in April, this Board of Trustees took action to lead the state in advocating for a hold harmless year and asking the state to reconsider some of these sweeping changes while not changing the name or really much about the communication timeline to schools and what that might look like. So fast forward to this year, September 12th, TEA still has not released accountability for last year. and they decided to pause it even longer than they anticipated because they had some concerns with their own growth score calculation and how they calculated growth. There seemed to be some anomalies, and honestly, it was a good thing they did because there were some anomalies. Then, as they're getting ready to release, we have a lawsuit enter the mix where a variety of individuals, organizations banded together to sue the state of Texas for essentially publishing the accountability manual, because it hadn't been adopted yet, after the close of the school year, and we still hadn't seen it. So basically, the accountability system hadn't been formally developed or approved until October of this year for the prior year's accountability ratings. So obviously, there were some concerns with that, which is why this board advocated for a hold harmless year. Interestingly enough, we're about to get the accountability manual for this accountability year in the next couple of weeks. Also realize state assessments are currently underway, and we are in April. So we're about to have that, but last year we didn't get the accountability manual till the next year after. So it's a concern. That probably shouldn't happen. But as we talk about STAR 2.0 and the accountability redesign, we also enter in a new conversation.
I just want to go on the record, say that previous slide, I did not understand it. Okay, I just want
Oh, so sorry. Yeah, that's the methodology.
Okay. I don't want, we don't have all night, so I'm sort of kidding.
I'll explain it to you
Yeah,
later.
school accountability is really simple,
Leo,
just how many kids pass the
You just
test,
mentioned
right?
Aggie math.
I took it all down, David. I'll teach you later.
Thank goodness for Dr. Jill Morris, who understands that
I don't know if I was
entire
putting that
item.
on there to.
I think she just made it up. That's what I was wondering. Did they just type?
No, it's for real, right? That's the comparison group methodology, similar to what we use for district methodology when we pick those groups.
Wow.
We actually overlay it, so how about that? So this is where we have the conversation going on right now, and it's computerized grading on state assessments. And so if we could go back a little further in time, the Texas English Language Proficiency Assessment, TELPAS, actually introduced computerized, or what they called automated scoring prior to this particular moment. They introduced it in 2017, 2018, and they did it for listening and speaking. So part of that assessment is each student is assessed in listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and I know Dr. Adams Molina could probably chime in on all of this, but in 17, 18, that was previously scored by the teacher in the classroom, and the results were sent into the state. There's calibration, all the things you had to do, right? Well, they switched to computerized, and when they did, we saw a marked difference in those results across the state. Fourth graders, third graders, the whole group. It just didn't fare as well when students were talking into a microphone for speaking and a computer was grading it. And remember, we're talking little kids, right? Elementary age. And so that became a point of contention for us to make sure that we were preparing students for that particular moment, which is one of the reasons why our bilingual department had brought Summit K-12 earlier this year, because it tests just like the kids test. It teaches just like the kids are going to be tested on this assessment. But I digress. Computerized grading, 17, 18. It went into effect in 22, 23 on TELPAS for writing. And what we saw is a part of STAR redesign. Remember I told you that every grade, every subject had now had a writing component? Well, to help with the volume of grading, they've introduced computerized grading for STAR and EOCs for the first time this year. So last year, humans graded all of those written documents, all those written responses. So let's take a look at the rubrics. You notice they had two different rubrics. Remember, STAR 2.0 is completely different. What they're asked to write about in the extended constructed response, the essay, is very, very different than the old STAR. So STAR of 21, 22, if you participated, you pretty much could guarantee you got a point or two, right? There's two graders, you usually got 2 points. This year it's different, and last year it was different, okay? Last year was STAR redesign. They changed the actual construction of that question, and you had to be able to give text evidence, and you had to be able to explain your answer, not just summarize. You had to read something and then use text evidence to give your justification and your answer. If you didn't do that, you didn't get points. Even if you wrote an entire page, you got 0 points. That was the big difference in what's happened. Computerized grading hadn't even happened yet. But so take a look at these scores across the state of Texas. These are the fourth grade scores. This just puts an exclamation point on how very different this STAR assessment is than the prior STAR assessment. So this is fourth grade. The highest score you could get was a 10. The lowest you could get is a 0. The two light blue colors are the old STAR, graded by a human, and the yellow is the new STAR, graded by a human. And you can see the number and the percentage of students who received a 0. So historically, on the prior STAR, STAR 1.0, about 5% of students would receive a 0 across the state for their writing portion. This year, or last year rather, pardon me, we saw 40% of third and fourth graders receive a 0, along with about 20% of those students in middle and high school on the extended responses. So the grading hasn't even gotten computerized yet, because one of the things TEA did do correctly is when they did computerized grading, they still had the safety net of at least 25% being scored by a human to make sure it was calibrated and correlated, right? To make sure it was giving reliable results. And if it ever had a concern, it would rescore them with a human grader. They're doing the same thing here. The difference in the scores of getting a 0, same pattern continues, by the way, in English 1 and English 2, all again scored by human graders in this moment, is that the rubric is just completely different. It's a different test, a different strategy, has different requirements, a different type of writing. It is much more in line with how we teach, which is good, but students are still remembering how they used to be coached to answer their questions and prepare for STAR administrations, and they're still making the adjustment. December EOC results, this is the first time, this year right now in December, is the first time computerized grading was utilized for STAR EOC, and it was really EOCs because it's December, right? So you'll notice there's a big difference across the state. You've probably seen lots of communications on social media and news stories about the big difference between last year's December EOCs and this year's December EOCs, and in particular, the percentage of students receiving a 0. It is higher. The rubric is different. It's an entirely different assessment. Last year, December EOC was on the old test. They were still on the old test last year.
EOC, explained what?
End of course exams at the high school level. Thank you, ma'am. And so the new test didn't come in until spring. So last year's December administration was still on the old version of the assessment. So computerized grading enters right now, this past December, right? I know I'm getting a little weird with my timeline. This last December, and that's when computerized grading began. We saw about 50%, 58% of our students would have been a 2 under the prior rubric, but got a 0 on this rubric. So again, it just goes to how very different this particular assessment is. TEA, again, did due diligence. They even put out the responses to districts to review them, and we could request them to be rescored by a human. We looked through ours. Most of them under the new rubric, we agreed with. There might have been 1 or 2 that we submitted for rescoring, which, you know, they gave us the option to do. It wasn't necessary. It actually was fairly reliable. Moving forward this spring, what's going on right now is the actual STAR assessment and end of course assessments for high school students throughout the district and throughout the state. State did us another favor, honestly. They did testing windows. That allows us to have more flexibility. It used to be at the beginning of the year we would publish, this is the day for STAR assessments, right? They give us that flexibility to pick the right day for each grade, each subject within a window. And so you can see up there the windows for the administrations. They are earlier this year. So fewer weeks of instruction to prepare for them, slightly fewer, 2-3 weeks. But they are flexible in how it's administered. They allows us to distribute technology resources, to distribute technology support staff, district staff to help with assessment, monitoring, all of the things to make sure that we're able to adequately support a comfortable and productive testing environment on each campus, unique to the needs of that campus. So we are in the midst of that window, in the heart of that window. At this time last year, I was coming to tell you about zone of uncertainty and all sorts of other fantastical things from the state of Texas. This year, I can tell you that we anticipate results in late May. We think they'll be in 1 to 2 days prior to graduation. And then parents should be able to see those results in the family portal around June. We'll send communications along with access codes for parents to be able to access those scores online for their students. So a little bit of a history of where we've been with STAR 2.0, the redesign, the accountability redesign, and now computerized or automated scoring engines that are being utilized at the state level. Any questions I can answer for you?
So,
Yes, ma'am.
because you're much smarter than me, tell me the difference in AI in this grading.
So I'm not that smart, Mrs. Waller. I'd have to get Mrs. Johnson up here to help me with that. I don't know that I've gotten enough information from the state on what their automated scoring engine is. It is an AI, artificial intelligence type interface, as I understand it. But it is essentially, it looks for those trends, and it does have that AI kind of aspect to it. But it has been in place since 2017-18. So it's not new and different. It's been utilized on Telpos reliably, and with results that have shown the right correlation and calibration.
So the students, especially the young ones that scored zeros or scored low,
Yes.
what's their repercussions for that?
So it impacts obviously, it can impact whether or not they met expectation on STAR. Right. If they did not meet expectation, then there's required tutoring under House Bill 4545 that we provide, and of course we would do that anyway. In the vast sense, our scores actually increased regardless of these changes. In terms of the percentage of students meeting expectation, but it does teach us how to better support our students going into those assessments. Right. We still had some teachers also struggling with how to prepare for that moment, and so I think it has solidified what that means to both the teacher and the student at this point, and how we need to operate a little differently than we have prior.
So if parents have a question, who do they start with? Their principal?
Their classroom teacher, who is also very able to answer the questions, and then of course campus administration or any one of us would be glad to help.
Do we have any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Ibarra.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now we're up to our citizens' comments on the agenda. Citizens may make comments about topics relevant to district business. Topics should be limited to 3 minutes. Comments concerning specific students or personnel will be heard in closed session. And we do have one citizen comment, Mr. James Long. Ms. Waller is going to be our timekeeper. Mr. Long is going to talk about a particular issue with a staff, but at no time will any staff member or student's name be mentioned or addressed. Ms. Waller, are we ready?
Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Long. I'm a father of 2 children who are about to come to Bryan ISD, and my wife is a behavior specialist for the district. I'm here today to discuss something that no father or husband should ever have to discuss. I have 2 points that I would like to bring to your attention tonight that I believe need immediate attention. Point 1 is Bryan ISD teachers are being assaulted and victimized across the district, and it appears that the district is not only not doing anything about it, but they are actively trying to cover it up. My wife was assaulted in October when she was punched in the head multiple times and had her head slammed against the wall. All of this was caught on film. The administration of the school stood around and watched my wife be assaulted, and then instructed the SRO officer to not do anything and not investigate. The student has been allowed to continue to assault teachers, with at least 4 other teachers having been assaulted and victimized to date. It appears from everything that I have seen that the district is attempting to cover up the problem and pressure teachers and staff to not speak out or seek proper medical attention after an attack. Point 2, Bryan ISD is using taxpayer money to try to harass and cover up their liability for allowing this to continue to happen. Bryan ISD is currently paying a law firm to continue to pressure and harass my wife, the victim of an assault, during her duties. This harassment seems to be trying to accomplish the goal of ensuring my wife does not receive the proper medical care. Bryan ISD paid for a private investigator to follow my wife around in an attempt to prove that she was faking, even though there was video proof of the assault. Bryan ISD and the district leadership has done the bare minimum to support my wife's recovery from a significant traumatic brain injury, which I, as a combat veteran who's been medically retired, have some familiarity with. It appears that they have instructed my wife's colleagues and supervisors to not speak to her. To date, it appears that Bryan ISD is using taxpayer money to try to prove a point to my wife and other staff that if they attempt to be vocal about the assaults that are happening on campus or attempt to receive the proper medical care for those injuries from an assault, they will be punished. In conclusion, my wife and other teachers and staff have been allowed to be victimized by students and the district, and an atmosphere of fear and paranoia has been allowed to be established in the district. In a time where the education of our kids is already lacking and good teachers are so hard to find and keep, this type of behavior and work environment will only result in the loss of talent and continued decay in our education of our children. And I'd like to point out that my wife is probably the most talented behavior specialist you could ever have.
Thank you, Mr. Long. As you know, as a board, we are not able to make comments on your statement or your comment. But what I can tell you is that we will get further information and we will get advised by our superintendent on this issue. Yes, ma'am. But thank you very much. Next, we will move on to items for discussion and consent on our consent agenda. May I remind the board members that if there's any item on the consent agenda that you wish to be pulled for further discussion, we can do that.
I move approval of all the items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Gonzalez and seconded by Mr. Stasny. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we will move on to items for discussion and or action on our regular agenda. Our first item is business services. Discussion and consider approval of a purchase over $50,000 for a technology box truck. Our presenter will be Executive Director of Technology Service, Ms. Julie Johnson, and I think Mr. Kevin Besaw is going to help her, or
Yes,
with
or,
that
or,
item,
or
I
vice,
think.
or vice versa. Yes.
Okay, it's actually, okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, if we need to get back up, Ms. Johnson is available. This is presenting about purchasing of a Freightliner box truck. This would be used for the library technology and textbook services. In addition, this would also be for, could be used for TSC warehouse deliveries, athletic department, fine arts department. They'll share in this box truck as well, and we can internally move funds around as according to usage to make sure everybody is aware. This is a used truck. We have, I think it's attached, the three quotes that we got on this, and there were three different versions. The one that we're looking at is with Lone Star Truck Group that's here local in Bryan, Texas. And when we look at this, it's an item that was budgeted for by technology to purchase. And when we consider the rent savings on this, the rent payback on this is probably somewhere between 2 and 3 years. So we think that makes sense to move forward with purchase rather than continuing to rent with the number of days and the usage of a truck such as this.
Mr. Besaw, if I may ask you, so you guys are looking at vendor number one, the vehicle with 92,000 miles on it?
Yes, sir.
Is there a reason that one's superior? I realize there's a price differential. Does a $92,000 truck come with any warranty?
Yes. Yeah. As I understand, there is a warranty, but I can't remember how long it is.
That's kind of important, Julie.
No, I did make sure it had have one, since it did have so many miles. But I understand because of the type of engine it is, that it should last for many years. We don't put a significant number of miles on a truck, but we do use them frequently. And when we have we're not using it necessarily as frequently, our athletics department and fine art are able to utilize it. So it's been a really good partnership.
Yeah,
We've been renting
definitely.
one for many years at this point.
I think it's a great, I was
yeah.
just curious, I'm sorry, and also, is it a 2022 or 2023? Because one of them says 22 and the other one says 2023.
Yeah, this is the right, yeah. The quote actually says 2023.
Okay, so it is a 2020,
Yeah.
okay, because that's,
Yep.
now, as far as, do the other two, the one which, I'm just worried about, we do a lot of, so, is there a substantial difference? I understand there's $15,000 difference between the one with 92,000 and the one with 12,000. But my concern is what differences are warranty-wise between the two? Is it, if you have an engine go out, transmission go out on something of that caliber, you can quickly eat up $10,000 or $15,000, and it seems like a 2023 with 12,000 miles is going to have quite a bit of warranty left on it. Sorry to catch y'all off guard. I should have asked y'all earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I believe they all were quoted with the same warranty, but I'm not seeing the,
I think they were too. Let me look.
yeah.
Is that, it's a local vendor?
That's correct, yes, ma'am. Yes,
So
Lone
that
Star Truck Group
probably-
is local, yes.
Because then we have local service, local everything,
Right,
as opposed to the other two.
yes.
But I think it's under warranty. They'll take care of it anywhere.
Yeah.
Julie, we'll go ahead and we'll table this for the minute till you find it. And we'll move on to the next one and we'll come back.
Thanks, Ms. Benford.
Okay? No.
Thank you.
Next, we'll discuss and consider purchase authorization over $50,000 for Milam and Hammond Oliver Annex facilities. Kevin, that would be you.
Yes, ma'am. And that's, this is directly related to the item that we discussed before with MC Harris and the Milam DAP transfer and move. We were able to, once we determined which actual scenario that we were going to go with, we were able to get two quotes on doing that work. The one that was the lowest was Vaughn Construction. And so that we do not at this time we have a listing of the work that is to be done at this time. And then we have gone through, the quote is actually a little over $350,000, but Mr. Clary has gone through and marked some items that we can do with the maintenance department as well. And so that's why we would ask for the approval not to exceed the $350,000, and we will do as much of the work as we need to make sure that does not go over.
Thank you.
And this would be to move forward with option 2, or is that not something that we're having to, the first part is the same on either option, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe this is tied to the scenario 2, which is
okay.
the option, yes.
I would move approval of the purchase authorization with Vaughn Construction for updates to the Milam and Hammond Oliver Annex buildings in an amount not to exceed $350,000.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Gonzalez, seconded by Mr. Stasny, for the authorization with Vaughn Construction for updates to the Milam Hammond Oliver Annex building in an amount not to exceed $350,000. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Just a kind of a side question. Who I'm not sure where we are on but I'll just ask it this way. Who's going to actually be supervising this project for the district?
Mr. Ron Clary will. He'll take
Okay,
the lead on this as well, since it's so closely related to his department, and they will hopefully even be able to do some of the work outside of what we contract out.
Well, just wondering. I have full expectations it'll be.
I vote for Merrill personally.
Now, there's actually many people involved, but as far as the person supervising the construction and the approved amount of work that you just agreed upon is, I'm going to go with Ron Clary over Dr. Merrill.
Over Brian.
Well, I just wasn't sure what the status of Mr. Buckner was. So.
Yes.
It would be a lot more interesting if Dr. Merrill handled it. The outlook, I'm just telling you.
You can give him a hammer.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our teaching and learning. So the next item will be discuss and consider a memorandum of understanding with Educational Services Center, Region 6, for Reading Academies. And I need to look at
tried to
that.
get
That's
Kevin to
going to
do
be
it, but he
brought to
said
us
no.
by Dr. Ibarro and the Executive Director of Special Programs, Ms. Jennifer Warren.
Yes.
And Dr. Molina is
I
going
was
to
going
help.
to say, and Dr. Molina is here
Okay,
as well.
thank you.
So, good evening. We're here tonight to discuss the Memorandum of Understanding with the Educational Service Center, Region 6. And that will be to support us in the TEA mandated reading academies for kindergarten through third grade. That would be teachers and principals. And tonight, Dr. Georgiana Adams Molina is joining me to support in that discussion. And this MOU outlines the agreement with Region 6 regarding the implementation of the Texas Reading Academies, which is a statute by the Texas Administrative Code that we must adhere to. And then, if we could go ahead and move to the next slide. Oh, got it. Okay, thank you. Before we dive into the MOU, it's important to understand the historical background of Texas Reading Academies, and then also the different modules or the different ways that districts can stay in compliance with the Reading Academies requirements. So we are going to talk about the why, and that's part of the history. We're also going to review the Reading Academy modules, a flow chart of the recommendation or the implementation, and then the 24-25 school year plan that we have for Reading Academies. Two people doing it. I'm going to let you do it, Clay. There we go. Okay, thank you. All right, so just a little bit of a recap on background. House Bill 3 was passed by the 86th Texas legislature in June of 2019, requiring all kinder through third grade teachers and principals to attend Teacher Literacy Achievement Academy that we affectionately known as Reading Academies. And that was for the 21-22 school year. The next legislative session, which was the 87th session in June of 21, extended this new requirement to kinder through third grade teachers and principals by the end of the year 22-23. So just a repeat extension. So to clarify, our kinder and third grade teachers are going to be our core content teachers, not just reading. There are some ways that districts have the authority to exempt certain positions, and that would be art and theater, but not those core content areas. The requirement is to complete that Reading Academy, and the idea is to support teachers with their evidence-based instructional practices, especially for our brand new teachers, to build that skill set and build their capacity. It also allows them the opportunity to learn evidence-based strategies on differentiated instruction in the Tier 1 classroom, which is very important, especially for our young learners that are coming in for school for the first time. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Molina so that she can talk about the different pathways, our MOU with Region 6, and the pathway we would like for you to ask questions about and eventually approve for us so that we can stay in compliance with Reading Academies.
Good evening, everyone. When we're talking about the Texas Reading Academies, there's two types of models, two types of implementation. The first one is the blended model, and we've been using that now for the past 3 years. It consists of mostly online, 12 modules consisting of 60 hours of content and competency demonstration. Because the teachers had to, most of them did a lot of the work outside of their contract hours, we offered a $500 stipend to compensate them for their time. Moving forward, we are only looking at the comprehensive model. I think Mr. Bryan brought this up earlier. It consists of the same 12 modules, but it's, again, 60 hours, but it's in person. And the reason why TEA decided to do something like this is they asked for teacher feedback, and there was more positive experience feedback from the comprehensive model than there was from the blended online version. So that's why the state has, from 24-25 moving forward, we're only doing the comprehensive version of the Texas Reading Academies. So when we're looking at the flow chart for implementation, it all starts with TEA, and they have mandated the Reading Academies for all K-3 content area teachers, including special education teachers, principals, of schools that have K through 3 teachers on their campuses. That goes down to an authorized provider, and the authorized providers are the education service centers. So what we have the option to talk about tonight is which direction are we going to go in. If we have the authorized provider, if we have ours, Education Service Center Region 6, provide the training to our teachers, it costs $3,000 per participant, and we're looking at 60 participants at a time. So that's $180,000, and you'll see in a minute, plus the cost of subs, plus the cost of travel between here and Huntsville. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and when we're in the climate we are right now, we're trying to be very conscientious of those kind of expenditures. So what we have decided to do, and with your blessing, is do it at a local implementation level, and that's where the MOU comes in. If we have one FTE or one employee salary, we can take care of the needs of 60 participating teachers. So one salary compared to over $180,000 of cost if we outsource our professional development to the service center. So we would like to keep it at a local level and have a highly qualified, absolutely wonderful person that's done the reading academies here at Bryan for the past 3 years, continue in that role to provide the comprehensive model to our teachers. Yes, so we're looking at, again, the $3,000 per participant and then the cost of subs and travel. So our plan, our implementation plan for 24-25 is we met in collaboration with most of the principals that are going to have the highest number of teachers that need to complete the reading academies on their campuses. And we came up with, I think it's a very viable plan to meet the needs of the teachers being the required training from TEA, and then also really trying to minimize the impact of lost instruction on at the campus level. So as mentioned in the previous slide, we're choosing to have a local implementation in order to have the flexibility to work with our calendar. That's key right there, work with our calendar to identify days with less impact on classroom instruction. So we've identified a couple days during the summer for session 1 and 2, and every single session that we offer will be offered in multiple days. So there's a lot of options for the teachers, a lot of variety. So we have the sessions during the summer, and teachers will get time equivalency days. So if they take time out during their summer, they will get those days back during the contract year. So we're just kind of switching those out early on. And then if we do it at a local implementation level, we're able to use the district PD days that are already identified on our calendar, as opposed to working with a calendar from the service center. So 6 of the 10 trainings will be on district staff development days built into our calendar, and all participants will attend on these days. And then finally, this is the one we wanted to stay away from most from the beginning, looking at classroom coverage. So we were able to get the 10 days of in-person 6-hour trainings down to 4, where teachers are actually going to be outside of the classroom, and we have to get classroom coverage. So on the 4 days, we'll require teachers to have subs, 2 dates per session, again, to minimize that impact on the subs reporting to one particular campus. I think we have one elementary school that has maybe 7 or 8 teachers that will be participating next year. So the idea was to offer 2 sessions, so 4 can go one day, 4 can go the next, as opposed to 8 all on the same day. Let's see. Are there any questions at this time? I think that was the last thing.
Not real sure on how this works or who's providing the services exactly. It's localized, but is there any excess capacity, or do you anticipate any excess capacity? And the reason I'm asking is if we've got some fixed cost here, there may be some small districts around that would want to take advantage of what we're offering. Is that a possibility?
We're doing good to take care of ourselves right now, without saying, that in a strange
Appreciate
way.
your honesty.
Yes,
That's awesome.
It's a scheduling nightmare.
We're doing good with taking care of ourselves right now, but basically we can have 60 participants. So even, and right now we're up to almost 40, so we have room for 20 more. And when we're looking at new hires, transfers from different grade levels down to K through 3, it could take us up or even past 60. So above 60, those teachers will go on to next year's roster. So we are really maximizing those 60 participants at a local level at this time. So yes.
Well, thank y'all for putting so much work into this. This is a lot of moving parts, and especially like you're saying at a time where we're having to be extra fiscally responsible. It's, thank y'all very much. I know it's a lot of work to get this much coordinated.
They've done a tremendous job. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. One thing too, Mr. Stasny, in light of our budget talk earlier and looking at staffing, it's also important to note that originally when this launched across the state, we obviously had to train every K through 3 teacher in the district. We had 3 individuals, 2 full-time and 1 part-time, who also had other duties working as Reading Academy facilitators. We're down to a singular person who does this now. And then she's also split funded and works with Dr. Molina as a bilingual instructional coach so that we maximize her time and her support, so it's out of a grant fund.
Great.
Do we have any other questions from the board?
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I move approval of the memorandum of understanding with Educational Service Center Region 6 for Reading Academies as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
We have a motion by Mr. Stasny, seconded by Ms. Waller, for the approval of the memorandum of understanding with Educational Service Center Region 6 for Reading Academies as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. We will now go back to our previous item for the box truck for technology and library services.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, great, Mr. Gonzalez. It was a great question. So the box truck that we selected, it has a 3-year warranty, basically. It's covering the Cummins diesel engine, the axle, lists all these different parts of the truck. So basically a 3-year
The
warranty.
3 years from purchase.
But one of the deciding factors on the truck we chose, which I should have mentioned earlier, was the lift gate on the back.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of really full pallets, and we needed one that had one that was strong enough. And the other 2, we would have had them hanging off
That
the
makes a
back.
huge difference. No,
So-
I understand. But there is a 3 year from the time
Yes.
we purchase it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's a Cummins. So
Yeah, I
apparently
mean,
it
yeah, they should
lasts.
never go wrong, but you know, that's.
And I'm glad it's a local vendor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the other ones too has it's basically the same warranty through, is basic through 7/24 of 24, unlimited miles extent warranty to 7/24 of 25, or 250,000 miles, and then the Cummins warranty till 27 or 200,000
Okay,
miles.
great. Thank you.
They're very similar.
Now, can I make a motion?
I'm ready.
All right. I move approval of the box truck for technology library services in the amount of $95,669.77 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gonzalez, seconded by Mr. Stasny, for the approval of the box truck for technology library services in the amount of $95,669.77. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all very much.
The board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items as allowed by the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551.074 and 551.0821. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 8:03. Board reconvened in open session at 9:42. No action was taken in closed session. We are now adjourned.